One of the fundamentals of survival, as well as just the general outdoor life, is being able to tie knots. And it's really important to be able to tie them in such a way that they untie easily and they serve the purpose that you intended them for. Whether it's because you're pitching a base camp, tying something onto your vehicle, or setting up a tarp shelter with a ridge line somewhere in the bush, you really want to be able to trust the knots that you're making. So in this series of videos, I'm going to be sharing the knots that I find really useful in the outdoors, starting with an end of a line bowline and a running bowline in this video. I'll move on to trackers hitches and clove hitches and all kinds of other things, and all of these knots are going to build on one another. I'm Clarice. Welcome to the Live Ready channel. Firstly, a couple of basics with ropes. The way you store your rope can really set you up to deploy a ridgeline very quickly and very easily. So I store all of my ropes already hanged, and then I also usually leave an end of the line bowline knot on my rope, so that when I undo that rope, I already have it on the end. I can quickly set up a running bowline, quickly do a trucker's hitch onto something else, and that really is one of my favorites. But before we get into trucker's hitches, we're going to do end of the line and running bowline. All right, so this end of the line bowline was previously used to tie a raft or to build a raft, and you can see how easily that comes undone, even though I tied that really tightly. In order to keep everything together on a raft, you really need those knots to hold. All right, so that's the great thing about an end of the line bowline, is it comes undone really easily. If it doesn't come undone really easily, my best advice to you, especially when ropes get wet, they get really difficult to undo, just use a Leatherman or a multi-tool of some sort, or some pair of pliers. Just loosen one end of it and the rest of it will come undone really easily as well. But for all intents and purposes, an end of the line bowline should come undone really quick and easy. Now, there are two different ways that you can do an end of the line bowline, and the purpose of it is to create a fixed point somewhere. So if I want to set a tarp shelter up or a ridge line up from this tree to my vehicle or to the tree on the other side, I need to set up a fixed point on the one end. The other advantage of an end of the line bowline is because it is so solid, you really can trust this knot to hold. Just a little bit of rope anatomy. Okay, the short part that you work with or that you fold around is the working end, and what you drop to the ground, and what's the longer part of that, the static part of the rope, is going to be the standing end. The first and most common way to make an end of the line bowline is to take your rope, working end, standing end, you make a roller coaster loop, something like that, so that your working end ends up being on top of the standing end. So this is where people go, the rabbit goes through the hole, but it means that you have to go underneath the loop to come through, okay, around the tree being the standing end here, and I'm going to go this side around the tree, the same side that I was coming out of the loop. So to the left, my left of the standing end. And now I'm forming a little hole here on the inside of what's going to basically be the knot. And I'm going to go around the tree and back through the smaller hole. Now, if I hold onto my standing and my working end and I pull taut, I have an end of the line bowline. And to check that I've done it right, there should be a teardrop shape around the standing end of my line. The other way that you can do this, which is my preferred method, is to once again make a loop, but this time with the standing end sitting on top of the working end. I now pull the standing end through my loop, thread the working end through, again around a tree. Okay, I pinch the working end on both sides, and now I just pull on the standing end. Now I've once again got an end of the line bowline. At this point, we can make a safety knot. If you're working with nylon rope, it might be worthwhile to do that, because especially those like really slippery nylon ropes tend to just move around all the time. All right, so with my safety knot now in place, I can now create a running bowline from wherever, for whatever fixed point. So not only is this knot going to come undone really easily, but if I make a running bowline, say around a tree, and to make a running bowline, I basically have a fixed point and I thread the working end through what is now my loop, and that over there is a running bowline. You can also make it around an object. So for example, if I've had storm damage to base camp before, and I've lost guy lines and things like that, they've pulled out of the tent, and what I would then do is put a new guy line onto the tent, but I would tie it on with an end of the line bowline rather than making some simple overhand knot that I am not sure is going to hold, or especially if you're looking at things like nylon rope that's slippery, it's great to know that your knot is actually going to hold. And for that purpose, an end of the line bowline is perfect. What's nice about leaving an end of the line bowline on your rope or on your paracord when you store it is that, first of all, it's really easy to then coil it and to store it away neatly, and then you can deploy it again easily later. In order to store especially a short line such as this, I usually take my end of the line bowline, hook it around my thumb, go over my pinky, over my thumb, and then just do a figure of 8 that way. Once I get to sort of the end of the line, I'll then take it off of my hand, wrap it around a couple times, and once I see it starting to get short, I just put a finger in there to make a little loop and push the end through. If you have a longer piece of rope, then simply hook it around your thumb and go around your elbow instead of going around your hand. And then the same thing applies once you've stored most of that line, wrap it around a couple times. This rope is a bit short for this purpose. There we go. And then once again, just thread the tail through the little loop that you made. So let's say I want to hang my bag from the tree and make a marling spike hitch, or I want to set up a tarp shelter. I now have a knot that I can use to set up a fixed point. So basically, to make a running bowline, oh, this tree is quite big. To make a running bowline, because this is an end of the line bowline, but as soon as I thread it through itself and I pull taut on it, I now have what we call a running bowline. Now the running bowline is great because I can put a lot of tension on there and I know it's going to hold. It's also really easy to adjust it and to move it around, or even just to undo it completely. And I know that I can trust this as a fixed point. I can now go and build a trucker's hitch or a marling spike hitch or whatever I need from the setup here, and I can be really secure in that it's going to stay there. If you've liked this video, remember to hit like, subscribe to the channel, follow me on social media. I post a bit more of the everyday live ready stuff on Instagram. Remember to keep an eye out for the rest of the videos in this series. I'll be building a lot on this knot as well. And until the next time, live ready.